Hello, it's John Gonzalez from the Dizziness, Balance and Concussion Centre, and this blog is all about looking at what we can do to prevent concussion. As always, we've got the disclaimer. Please, if you think someone's got a concussion, think anyone's had a bang on the head, please go and get medical attention, get them checked out properly. Don't just rely upon a blog on the internet. I hope you find the information valuable, but again, it's changing all the time. So again, it might, depending on when you watch it, it might be out of date, but there is some good stuff in here, so hopefully it'll help. So the first question we need to ask ourselves, is it actually preventable? And unfortunately not. There'll always be concussions. There's always going to be accidents, there's always going to be impacts in certain sports, that's the nature of the sport, therefore we're always at risk of a concussion. People are being more competitive, people are pushing the boundaries further, they're getting more athletic, heavier, things like this, nutrition's improving and training regimes. That's always going to put people at risk of getting an impact through the body or through the head that's going to lead to a concussion. One of the key things to prevent a future concussion, and a lot of people watching this blog start to think about how can we stop a concussion only after they've had one. One of the first things you can do is that if you've had a previous concussion is making sure that you've recovered fully, because we know that if you haven't, you're at higher risk of getting another concussion sooner. Equally, there's also the implications of secondary impact syndrome, which can potentially lead to more serious conditions. So the first point to be preventing a future concussion is making sure you've recovered from a previous one, and that's very, very important. So what can be done? Well, sports clubs have got things in place, concussion policies to cope with when a concussion does happen, but the other things are just important to try and stop them happening in the first place. As always, prevention is better than cure. First thing, we need to be ready to play, alert and aware of what's happening around us. If we can foresee a collision before it happens and get out of the way, or to kind of be prepared for it, or take a glancing blow rather than a full-on blow, that's going to be beneficial. So we've got to be careful. If we've been out the night before and drunk a load of alcohol and we're hungover when we're playing, when our awareness and alertness isn't going to be what it should be. So bearing that in mind, equally not distracting players and being focused, letting them focus on what's happening is important as well. An obvious one, the fewer times you hit your head, the chances of you getting concussion go down. Yes, you can get concussion in other ways, but it's predominantly through an impact on the head. So we've got to put the correct technique in play, and that's important. Certainly in rugby, we've got to make sure that we're tackling with our heads out of the way of the knees, elbows, things like this. Using the right technique. Coaches have got to take a responsibility with this as well. They've got to spot poor technique and make sure that it's coached and that the players taught correctly. So that's important. We know that a lot of concussions come when players don't play by the rules. Either they take a cheap shot or things like this. So the officials have got to be strong. They've got to be enforcing the rules. They're there for a reason, and they've got to be making sure that they stick to them and get the players to stick to them as well. The correct equipment and well-fitted equipment, and we're going to come on to this in the next slide and so on, but it needs to be well-fitting. A lot of people will wear equipment that's maybe a bit damaged, a strap's damaged so it's loose or something like this. That can cause a distraction, it can impair the vision, things like this. It needs to be age appropriate, the right size, in good condition and fitting well. It's not going to prevent a concussion, but equally ill-fitting equipment can lead to a distraction, which then can lead to a further accident. So we'll come on about helmets and things with respect to concussion. It's not going to prevent that per se, but if it doesn't fit well and it becomes a distraction or it stops someone doing the right technique, that's when it can become even more of an issue. The next three are quite similar really, but you need to have good coaching and good example from spectators and parents, things like this, good sportsmanship, and it's everyone's responsibility. If we've got a crowd that's baying for blood, then the players are going to get hyped up, they're going to go for it, they're going to start getting the adrenaline going and go too hard or too eager, or they might be tempted to break the rules, things like this. So we can't be doing that. We've got to do it in the right way, we've got to play in the right manner. It's a game, it's a competitive endeavour, rather than seeing somebody get seriously hurt at the end of it. So yes, stick to the rules, but equally we've got to be careful we're not geeing people up too much to get them too hyped up to then go and throw themselves here, there and everywhere. We need to keep in perspective and do it all in the right way. So one thing I'm often asked is, what about just strengthening my neck? Get it as strong as I can, will that help stop the concussions in the future? It's not quite as simple as that. There is a link between the strength of a neck and potentially limiting concussions. It'll never stop it fully, but it's not purely how strong your neck is. It's all about how quickly the muscles time and become rigid when they have an impact. Also, the proprioceptive nature of the muscles as well, we believe, and it's still going through a lot of research and different things, so it's not 100% science at present at all. But that, we think it's a lot more to do with how the muscles are working rather than strength alone. But strength does play a role in it. So that's, rather than just going to the gym and sticking a lot of weights on and doing some crazy neck exercises, that's not going to probably do it on its own. It's more how the neck muscles are actually functioning and working as well, rather than purely how strong they are. We can test things like proprioception in the neck and things like this, and have a good look at it, and any sort of healthcare professional who deals with necks would be able to do that and help with that. But as I say, there's a lot more research in this field happening now and to come in the future, so we should get a better picture with that. It's not a bad idea to have a guided approach to how to strengthen your neck. It's not always how people think. It's sometimes mainly about the stabilizers rather than the pure movement muscles and things like this. So again, it's best to have it looked at by a healthcare professional who knows what they're on about with it, rather than just going and do some crazy neck exercise and things like this, which could potentially lead to further neck problems and pain just in their own right. So you've got to be careful slightly with that. But hopefully and potentially there is some way to be able to limit concussions or limit the number of concussions. But even if we could do everything perfectly with this, it's not going to stop all concussions. Unfortunately, there's still going to be forces through the brains if you get certain types of hits and blows and things like this. But it's an interesting place to keep an eye on and research to keep an eye on in the future. The next one I always get, I wear head guard, gum shield, helmets, things like this. As I said previously, they don't stop concussion. They can stop other very serious brain injuries or serious injuries to the mouth and jaw and things like this, potentially. And they are there for a reason, so I'm not saying don't use them. No, please use them where appropriate. They should be well fitted and they should be in good quality and in good shape. But they don't stop the transfer of forces through the head. Now, there is a lot of research in this, and it's coming all the time. So in the future, it might be something a bit more effective, but certainly nothing there at the moment. So we need to look at it a bit more carefully. The other thing to bear in mind is that some people put these helmets on or headgear, gum shields, things like this, and they feel invincible. It's like wearing pads as well. We feel invincible. Certainly children and things like this. And there is actually some there is certainly anecdotal research and certainly some decent research which suggests that players might put themselves at further risk because they feel invincible, but their actual brain hasn't received any sort of invincibility whatsoever. So they feel it, and they might not feel a bruise or their initial knock, but the brain is still being shook, and potentially even more so, and they start acting in a reckless manner and being a lot more careless. So that's something we've got to really be bearing in mind and making sure that that's not happening. Yeah, the safety gear is there for a good reason, but it doesn't mean you should be leading and running in with your head and things like this. So that's got to be thought about as well. So the key points to it all, very, very briefly, very simply. Concussions will always happen. We can't prevent it. If you come across something at the moment that says we can stop concussion if you buy X, Y, and Z, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. There's nothing out there in the research which suggests that. Maybe in the future that'd be great, but certainly nothing at present. We've got to be alert and playing in the correct manner, using the right techniques as well, but we need to create this ethos around playing sports in the correct manner, that we're not there to try to hurt. Accidents will always happen anyway. Most innocent, most innocuous accidents will happen. We don't need to make it worse. We need to be doing things in the right way. Don't expect helmets, head guards, gum shields to stop the concussion. As I say, they stop other injuries, but they're not going to stop concussion, so don't have too much faith in those. Equally, when a concussion does happen, the best thing to do is don't take a chance. It needs to be assessed properly by a qualified healthcare professional. They need to have knowledge in concussion, and then equally making sure you get over that concussion effectively limits your chances next time as well, because as I say, if you've not recovered fully, the chances of a second concussion are a lot higher. If you want any more help or information, you're always welcome to go to the website concussiontherapy.co.uk, or you can always email myself at info@concussiontherapy.co.uk. I'm more than happy to respond to emails and different things like that. Equally, our partners over in Canada, CompleteConcussions.com, have got a great resource over there as well. Thank you very much.